Cryptopsy are a band I have a lot of history with, and a band that has a lot of history just in general. Forming back in 1992 in Montreal, alongside bands like Cataclysm and Gorguts, they started to get attention with their 1994 debut Blasphemy Made Flesh. But it was their 1996 sophomore effort, None So Vile, that really started to turn heads. It took everything from the debut album to the most extreme, and it is considered to be one of the most beloved technical death metal albums to this day, rivaled by very few albums. They would go through some lineup changes for their third album, Whisper Supremacy, from 1996, most notably losing their mysterious yet ever charismatic frontman Lord Worm. They would replace him with a guy named Mike DeSalvo, who had a completely different style and approach, which kind of disappointed some of the older fans. This album would be their most technical album to date, just a dizzying array of blistering musicianship. DeSalvo did one more album with the band before leaving, with Lord Worm returning, much to the fans' excitement, but he would leave again after just one album, which once was not, from 2005. In 2007, they would get a new singer named Matt Magaki, who would debut, unfortunately for him, on the much derided 2008 album, The Unspoken King. They would try to bounce back from the backlash of that album by taking a few steps back and, aim for a sound somewhere between the earlier and mid-eras of the band, and would self-release an album in 2012 and two EPs in 2015 and 2018. So after being quiet for almost 5 years, they announced a new album through their now record label Nuclear Blast. And here we are with the first full-length in roughly 11 years, as Gomorrah Burns. First off, I like the nod to their pre-Cryptopsy days, since they were actually called Gomorrah before naming themselves Cryptopsy in 1992. Now, I have been a fan of the band since around 2004, maybe 2005. I love the demo and first 5 albums, but admittedly, I turned my back on Cryptopsy after The Unspoken King was released. It was their version of Morbid Angel's Illud Divinum Insanus, and I wasn't going to make any time for that. I had sampled a bit of what they have done since 2008, but nothing really interested me too much, even though I, admired them for sticking with it. I even saw them live sometime around, I think it was 2010 or so, and they were great. Matt actually impressed me, and I loved his stage presence. So I'll admit, even after hearing about this new album, I wasn't too interested until I started hearing good things from some reliable sources. I was told that Cryptopsy were back in a big way, that they had finally found their modern sound, and I knew I had to hear it. So I picked up the album and thought it would be a good idea to review it. The question is, does this album hold up? Well, let's see. Track 1, Lascivious Undivine, starts off pretty scorching with technical riffing and flows, drums just blasting, vocals sound more in the vein of Lord Worm's style than I remember from before. This genuinely sounds to me like it could have came from the None So Vile album. The melodic riff section in the middle of the song was really cool. I instantly liked the song, and my opinion doesn't change even by the time it finished. The last 10 seconds kind of sound like Cryptopsy playing chuggy, brutal death metal, and I actually wouldn't mind hearing more of that. Track 2, In Abeyance, starts off just as frantic sounding as track 1 did, and I liked the kind of slowed down, atmospheric middle section, even though it doesn't really last too long before jumping into high-speed territory. In true Cryptopsy fashion, there are constant tempo changes. On the plus side, you can't really get bored, but I'm really enjoying, the brief, kind of slower moments. Track 3, Godless Deceiver, has a cool angular riff that comes in and kind of separates the fast, frantic passages. And what I'm appreciating so far is that although this is a very technical album, it's still really digestible. The songs are there. They're fairly concise. Track 4, Ill Ender, has a really cool, brutal breakdown around the 3-minute mark. Probably my favorite part of the song, at least. And I'm realizing, as much as I appreciate this kind of death metal, I'm just a sucker for dynamics these days. Track 5, Flayed the Swine, is not a title I like at all. I think it's fucking stupid. But it starts with Matt doing his best Lord Worm impression. And I'm not saying that he doesn't have his own style, but he definitely gives us our Lord Worm fix, which is cool for those of us that kind of miss him a little bit. This song also has some of the fastest flow Monnier drumming on the album, or at least that I've noticed. It's cool that, at his age, he can still play like this. I also like the melodic guitar solos here. It kind of breaks up all the super technical riffing. Track 6, The Righteous Lost, has some cool bass grooves starting like at the 14-second mark. Everyone really gets to shine on this song, and I'd say it's one of my favorites on the album so far. You even get more of the cool melodic guitar solos, and I have to say that I love the tones. I'm not a musician, but I am kind of a tone guy. Track 7, Obescent, stands apart from the other songs with an like ominous, almost industrial sounding intro with the way the drums are slow and mechanical sounding with the bass kind of growling alongside the atmospheric guitar passage. I again appreciate the dynamics before blasting away just before the minute mark. I almost said that I could use more of that, but I guess if there was a lot of that kind of thing, it wouldn't really be very Cryptopsy. I do like the tempo changes and brooding atmosphere during certain parts. The moodier parts remind me a bit of the industrial type stuff that Napalm Death will sometimes do when they're feeling experimental. I don't think that I can really describe it, but I'm liking the riffs on track 8 for what it's worth. They almost remind me of earlier Meshuggah. I think that's the closest I can get. A lot faster though. Track 8, Praise the Filth, is the final track and starts with a cool, slow, dissonant riff, reminding me a bit of like later era Immolation. The mid-pace parts in the middle are cool, the riffs sound heavier, and everything can breathe a bit. This, of course, does not go on too long because, well, this is Cryptopsy after all. The atmospheric crescendo near the end was a great way to end not only the song but the album as well. So overall, I enjoyed this album. I think that this will please some of the older and probably a bit jaded Cryptopsy fans should they decide to give this a shot. And really, I think they should. As Gomorrah Burns does harken back to albums like None So Vile and Whisper Supremacy. Time is needed for us to decide, how this new album stacks up to those older classics, but in the meantime, I do think that it is a good album overall. I'm going to give As Gomorrah Burns a solid 7 out of 10. I'm not a massive Cryptopsy fan, but I do own most of their stuff, and I do like everything from the earlier, slightly more simple stuff from like Blasphemy Made Flesh to the more experimental Once Was Not. I would recommend this to all fans of Cryptopsy, even those that wrote them off, after the 2008 misstep, because, As Gomorrah Burns just might win you back.